Good day, I'm Teresa Frederick from Growing Businesses Using Projects, bringing you yet another video, this time in the area of project management. And we are looking at network diagrams and the critical area of the critical part, what it is and its importance. I'm going to use a work example and explanations for the management of the schedule. My intent with this and every other video is to ensure that the ordinary person can understand what is being taught and apply it. In our agenda today, we're going to look at what is a project network diagram and its benefits, what is the critical part and its importance for managing the schedule, what is the precedence diagramming method and the different task dependencies. We're going to do an example of using the enumeration method to determine the critical part. We're going to do an example of performing forward and backward pass to determine the critical part, and we're going to calculate float and make suggestions for the management of the schedule of tasks that must be completed to complete a project. It, however, is also the shortest time that a project can be completed. If you look at this area here, you will see activity A, B, D, F, and G are on the critical part. They are normally colored in red and they normally have zero floats. You will understand this more when we go through the example. So I'm using Excel to go through this example. You have activity A. There's no predecessor, so you know it's at the start and it's 2 weeks. Activity B has a predecessor of A and it's 4 weeks. So you have A and then you draw arrow to B. Activity C has no predecessor, so you know it's at the start and it's 3 weeks. So we have that here. Then you have activity D. Activity D, predecessors are B and C. So it means that you have to draw the arrows from B and C to D. Now activity E has a predecessor of C. So it means that C is the predecessor, you draw arrow to E. Activity F has a predecessor of D and E. So you have to now draw an arrow from D and E to F. And activity G has a predecessor of F. So you have to draw an arrow from F to G, and it's 7. So how you determine by the enumeration method the critical part? You have to determine how many parts there are in the schedule. You have A to B to D to F and to G. That's the first part. A, B, D, F, G. And what you do, you put equal and then you check the duration. 2 plus 4 plus 6 plus 4 plus 7. And that's 23 weeks. Now the second part you would have is C to D to F to G. C to D to F to G, you put an equal and you check the duration. 3 plus 6 plus 4 plus 7, which is 20. And the last part, you have C to E to F to G. So you're going to have 3 plus 5 plus 4 plus 7. And just looking at this here, you will realize that A to B to D to F to G is the longest part. So until this part has been completed, let me just see if I can color code it so that you can see the difference. Until this part has been completed, it means that you would not have completed the schedule. It's the longest part through the schedule, but it is the shortest time that the project can be completed. So that this is a method, is a quick method of determining what is the critical part. But there's another method. Now this has limitations because it does not help you to calculate things like float. So you may be asking, what is float? We're going to be looking at that next. So I have brought back this diagram And we are now going to be looking at a different method of calculating the critical path. For that, the legend is early start, early finish, late start, late finish. So in each activity, we are determining the early start and the early finish. The one I like to use is 0 because it means at almost 1 minute to the time, not even 1 minute, 1 second to the time you have started. So you have 0 plus 2. It means that, seeing that this is 2 weeks, it means that this can finish at 2 weeks. Similarly, this is starting from 0 and it's 3 weeks, so it can finish. So the early start is 0, the early finish is 3. The early start is 0, the early finish is 2. Now A goes into B. Now, because A is finishing at 2 weeks, it means B can start at 2. Now you might ask why. Just think of it in terms of minutes. You have just finished 2 minutes and it is going towards 3. It has not even gone anything much, just at the tip. So it means that you cannot start at 3 because you would have lost a whole minute. You're actually starting at 2. At the start of the day, like for instance at 12:01, 1 minute past 12, that kind of thing. So that it means you have the whole day, if it's a day duration, to be spent on activity B. So you have 2 plus 4 is 6. It means the early start of B is 2 and the early finish is 6. Now both B and C they have to go into D. C is finishing at 3 weeks, but B is finishing at 6 weeks. It means that as you go forward, you're going to have to take the later time, because you cannot take 3 weeks, because it means that B would not have finished, and both have to finish before D can start. So you'd have 6 as an early start at D, and 12, 6 plus 6 weeks, because this is the duration, 12 as the early finish of D. Now, when we look at C going into E, because C is finishing at 3, it means E can start at 3. And the duration is 5, so it means an early finish of 8. Now we are going into F. One of the activities finishing at 12 and one finishing at 8. As you go forward, you take the latest. You cannot take E because D would not have been finished as yet, and F could only start when both B are completed. So the 12 is what you will take as the early start. 12 and 4 is 16. And because G is from F, it means it can start at 16 and it will finish at 23. Remember, we had that 23 in terms of the critical part. So we have completed the forward pass and we're going to the backward. You start at the late finish, you take away the duration, you end up with 16. Because this one is a finish the start relationship with G, it means this can finish, late finish at 16. 16 minus 4, the late start is 12. But here again, you have two activities. They can both finish at 12. Alright, and not blow the schedule. So let's look at the difference between B and D. You have 6 minus 12 is 6. It means B can, the late start, late finish of B can be 6. 4 minus 6 is 2. And similarly, late finish of A is 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. Alright. But let us come between E and C. We said the late finish of E was 12. 5 minus 12 is 7. Now you may ask why this 7 did not go across here. Now that's an interesting question. C is a finish to start relationship with D, and it has a finish to start relationship with E. But D has to start at 6. If D starts at 7, it's going to blow the schedule. because like at 6 you have 23 days, at 7 you would realize you're going to have 24. Given that D has to start at 6, the latest C can finish is 6. So that 3 minus 6 is 3. What we have done a forward part that has confirmed the critical part, and we have done a backward part that has also shown us something called float. So let us discuss float a little more. I'm introducing you to the concept of total float and free float. The total float is the amount of time that a task can be delayed without affecting the completion date of the project. It is done by using a formula that is late start date minus early start date, or late finish date minus early finish date. Let's look at the legend. Late finish date minus early finish date, late start date minus early start date. So that when you look at the activities on the critical part, you will realize there is no total float. For instance, the late finish date of G is 23, as is the early finish. The late start date is 16, as is the early start. However, the activities on the non-critical part, they have slack. For instance, the late finish date of activity E is 12 and the early finish is 8. So there's a 4-week slack on activity E. Similarly, on activity C, the late finish date is 6 and the early finish date is 3. You have a total float of 3 on both sides. So let's look at the second concept, the free float. That is the amount of time that a scheduled activity can be delayed without delaying the early start of any successor or violating a schedule constraint. Such activities are normally not on the critical part. Free float, the is early start of next activity. We are looking at activity E, so the early start of the next activity is 12 minus early finish of the current activity. The current activity is 8. So you realize here has free float of 4, the difference between 8 and 12. However, when we look at activity C, the early start of activity E is 3, and the finish of activity C is 3. So you cannot delay this activity C at all, or it will delay this subsequent activity. So that whereas there is some leeway with respect to D, because the early start is 6 and you have the early finish is 3. However, because it also has this relationship with E, there is no free float on C, but there is free float on E. So what is the significance of that? A project manager should closely monitor critical path activities. By assigning persons to monitor and report on these critical activities, by ensuring that unwanted slippage does not take place on the activities that are not on the critical part, as there can be possible extension of the project duration as new critical parts are created, and therefore the original part is now of little significance. So let us reiterate what is the importance of the critical part. The critical part helps to visualize the entire project. The resulting early and late start and finish dates indicate the time periods within which the activity could be executed using activity durations, logical relationships, leads, lengths, and other known constraints. It identifies the important tasks that must be completed on time to avoid exceeding planned completion date of the project. They are called critical path activities, and the project manager can assign persons to monitor them in the project. It identifies how long tasks can be delayed if needed and how much float they have. This would allow for the reallocation of staff in emergencies from non-critical tasks to critical tasks. If you like my content, give it a thumbs up. Thank you.